created a legend for himself.
The only lasting thing about Jacob Sternwood would be his prison sentence. Welcome to The Punch is a good old-fashioned cops and robbers movie, first and foremost, with a huge kind of aesthetic and action note taken from Hong Kong action cinema.
The film is about a cop who's been tracking down a ruthless criminal, a cop played by James McAvoy who's been tracking down a ruthless criminal called Jacob Sternwood, played by Mark Strong.
From my point of view, it's about a guy that comes back from being retired from a life of crime to help his son, who is in trouble, and encountering a policeman who's been after him for the last few years, ever since he left him wounded in the street in London.
Mark Strong leaves him physically and mentally quite significantly scarred, and years later he is given the opportunity to face up against them again, and he has to decide whether he's going to be bound in by his fear and his doubts and his paranoia, or if he can move past all that. And when he does, he confronts his demon, and he realises that there's a hell of a lot more to his demon than he's been fixating upon.
But really, it's a cat and mouse chase through London between these two guys.
Ryan raised the cash, using the family name as leverage. Otis did the deals. And that's where it gets complicated. 4 days ago, Otis was found floating in the Thames with a bullet in his head. The next day, they pick up Ruan at City Airport, suffering from a gunshot wound. They know who he is, Jake. They're going to make an example of him. Because of us. Because of you.
The thing that I liked about it is that Mark has played the villain before, and when you go into this movie, you go in with preconceptions, I think, with his character. And I wanted to play on that, because you go in with these preconceptions of who he is and what his character is. But actually, he's the anti-hero, and you realise that his character is motivated by love, the love of his son. And he becomes a much more three-dimensional character, and there's moments in the film where you have empathy for him, and you see him emotionally distraught. Do you know what I mean? And it's not the sort of thing you're used to seeing with those characters, and I wanted to look in the grey areas. I didn't just want it to all be black and white and cops and robbers. I wanted to look within the grey areas, so you have empathy for both characters.
The challenge with those kind of parts, I think if they're two-dimensional baddies, you just think, oh right, that's what they're designed to do. We're just meant to boo and hiss them like an old panto villain. But if you can make them real people, then it just becomes a little bit more interesting. And I would say that James's character, Max, even though he's on the good side, he's the copper, he's not necessarily a particularly likeable character.
When characters are very, very simple, they're kind of harder to play because they're not very truthful. People, we are all incredibly complicated things, and the more complicated, the more truthful, and therefore the easier they become to play. So he was very, very complex in what is actually a very simple story, and that was quite a nice sort of that was a nice parallel to play.
Meaning maybe it's not all about Jacob Sternwood.
What else is it about?
Dean Warnes for a start, and a dead 22-year-old.
Yeah, which all lead back to Jacob Sternwood. I've just got to figure out how.
You? Right.
Me?
Right, you know what? Catching Sternwood is not going to change the past.
It has to. Well, I'm always going to be that nobody that got shot in a tunnel and let him get away with it.
Listen.
Don't.
Please.
Sarah.
It's a really entertaining movie. But more than that, I think it's a British movie, and we should be proud of it. And it's got kind of international appeal for the first time.
It feels classier than your usual British crime thriller. It feels bigger scale. It's got better acting. It's got faster action sequences. Yeah, hopefully it hits the target and people will enjoy it.
I hope they enjoy the action. I hope they enjoy the characters, and I hope they feel empathy for both Mark and I throughout it, at the same time as just enjoying the fights and stuff. You know.
Get down!